Welcome back to the Piping Pastor. Today we'll be continuing in our Poetry in the Bible series by taking a look at Samuel Johnson. Well, this afternoon, although we're going to be dealing with the quintessential Englishman, I'm not smoking a deep English, although that's my preferred blend, and it's the poet we're talking about. I'm still kind of exploring the Bijou by Cornell and Deal. It wasn't bad. It wasn't what I expected. I was a bit surprised at the subtle balance, but I was also really surprised to get a latent Nick hit from it towards the end of the bowl. Now it could have been also because my blood sugar was a wee bit low, so it could have been a combination of the two things. So I'm giving it another go, and we'll see what happens. If it continues to be that strong on the back end there, it might be relegated to an intermittent late night smoke, maybe. I'm not necessarily put off by the Nick hits, but I do like to plan them, so we'll see. Well, I recently finished my Mallory text of Le Morte Arthur, which I was happy to get through. It was a good read. It was a good read, but I'm essentially reading that. I'm reading Tennyson's work to get some context around the upcoming release of Malcolm Guite's poetic interpretation of the Grail Quest. I'm a big fan of context. I think context is incredibly important, and you don't need it to appreciate poetry, by no means. I think poetry as an artistic representation of the human condition and our engagement with each other in the environment can take on something more than itself, so that a poet writing from their own experience and their own position in life can reach someone on the other side of the world in a completely different context in a very deep manner. You don't have to share experiences of any sort or have any historical knowledge of the poet in order for them to reach and touch something that's really important to you. So it's by no means necessary, but I do find it helpful. And it's kind of the academic geek in me too that wants to get as much information around the subject before I get into the subject, so I have some background. That being said, just finishing the Morte Arthur, I began my work on the life of Johnson by Boswell, not Boswell the pipe maker. Boswell, the 18th century historian, author, contemporary, and friend of Samuel Johnson. So, and as I'm reading this, I'm going through this, and I'm getting some of Johnson's background and history. I've also been concurrently reading a poem of his here or there, and because some of them are in the book, some of them are referenced in the chapters, and as such, I'm getting them interspersed. Where normally I would read all the background context information and then delve into the actual work. The way that Boswell wrote this, he's got chunks of essays and prose sections and letters and poems from Samuel Johnson in it. So I thought, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and get into that, because this one I found referenced in particular, and it's the full copy's not in the book, but happily, of course, I have a collection of Samuel Johnson's work as well. I would not go so far to call myself a bibliophile. I think that's kind of a grandiose term for what I am. I just love books, and I love reading, so I have a bunch of them. And I love used bookstores. So I am by no means a collector of rare first editions. I am just a collector of great literature, largely for my own benefit, and then eventually for my children to deal with when I pass on. Happily, I have children who love reading. So, in any case, this poem by Johnson, it's called The Vanity of Human Wishes. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, because it's quite a lengthy work, but these first few lines here, I think, have a great tie-in to a message from the Bible. So, let observation with extensive view survey mankind from China to Peru, Remark each anxious toil, each eager strife, and watch the busy scenes of crowded life. Then say how hope and fear, desire and hate, o'erspread with snares the clouded maze of fate, where wavering man, betrayed by vengeance pride, to tread the dreary paths without a guide, as treacherous phantoms in the mist delude, shuns fancied ills or chases airy good. I was reading that, and the first thing that popped into my mind was, wide is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be that go down it. Narrow is the path that leads to life, and few there be that find it. That verse from the Bible is not speaking about an eternal mystery in the fact that God hides the path from us. What that verse is intending to show us is that the narrow path that leads to righteousness, the narrow path that leads to God through Jesus Christ, that narrow path of following God and God's laws and so forth, is narrow because it's God's way. Wide is the path that leads to destruction because it can be any old way. Everyone has a different path. Everyone has a different view, a different agenda, all these different things that they want to try to accomplish, and just getting from here to there, getting to your goals, being self-interested, thinking only about the accomplishment of worldly things. That's why, because that's most people, right? Most people do not wake up in the morning and think, how can I glorify God today? How can I reveal God's truth to another human being? How can I serve my fellow human being? How can I show love to my neighbor, right? Most people wake up in the morning, scratch their eyes, check their phone, look at their to-do list because they have to get A, B, and C accomplished. To get up and go to work and do all these different tasks. Why? To make money, to be successful, to move yourself in your career. And sometimes that concurrently, rides along with betterment of humankind. If you're a researcher in the medical field, or if you're a nurse or a doctor, or you're a teacher, or there's a myriad of different fields that benefit our fellow humans. But where that differs is the motivation in there. And there's another point in here that I think that is really important. I mean, he's saying, let observation with extensive view survey mankind from China to Peru. This is not just like an American or Western European thing. This is all over the world. Right? This is a natural human condition. That wide path is a natural human condition. You see it anywhere and everywhere. In various different cultural sets, it looks different, but it's a wide path because there are so many that go down it. And the other point here that I think is really important here, he says, to tread the dreary paths without a guide, as treacherous phantoms in the mist delude, shuns fancied ills or chases airy good. So to walk your path alone without a guide. I had a brilliant back and forth a little bit with Vegas Piper about this, about seeking not only knowledge for yourself, but seeking guides in knowledge, right? Seeking experts in order to help you along the path of acquiring knowledge. But in this, we're talking about a metaphysical guide. In this, we're talking about a spiritual guide, because that keeps your feet on the path. It keeps you true to the purpose to which you're actually meant to be pursuing, the one for true joy and true fulfillment. Not just owning a nice car and dressing nice, but rather pursuing that which is grander. Now, it's not to say you can't own a nice car and dress nice. Dress nice. That's me, owning a car that I think is nice. I'm a classic British car guy. And men's fashion is kind of my thing. But that doesn't preclude me from following the narrow path. It doesn't preclude me from chasing after God with all that I am, and loving my fellow human being with all that I can, and serving in every way that I can, right? Because those things, those airy goods, are not distracting me, right? The fancied ills and airy goods distracting. The imagined problems, the worry, the strife, or chasing after earthly goals, those airy goods, right? Because those are the phantoms in the mist that delude. So there's a great deal of wisdom in poetry. As I said, sometimes it's even bigger than what the author originally intended. But when you place it in conjunction with sacred text, it doesn't matter what your tradition is, honestly. If you're a Christian, you use the Bible, or if you're looking at the Buddhist sutras or what have you, right? We have these holy texts that teach us about our metaphysical truths, that teach us about God, right? But sometimes it helps us if we can look at things from a different angle. Emily Dickinson has a great poem about this, Tell It Slant, right? Where the poems offer a different view because the poet kind of looks at reality from a little bit of a different section, right? They're using metaphor and analogy to explain the human condition. And when you look at it that way, you can understand your own position a little better. And then you can pull up the sacred text and read the Bible and say, oh, okay, now the penny has dropped. It's about finding your way, but with a guide, and not being distracted by those fancy ills or airy goods. So, well, that is it for this time. So thank you once again for joining us. And I look forward to our next chat. In the meantime, have a lovely week. And as always, happy reading.